Hi, everyone. It is 1 on the dot. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I just want to say hello, I'm Nell. I use she, her, hers. I'm the AAA's Accessibility and Meetings Coordinator, and I am a white woman with black hair, wearing a black headset. And I've got thin rimmed glasses and a nice little patterned collared shirt on, with the background being a tan AAA background with our logo. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us today. We're really, really excited. I'm really, really excited that you're joining us on this journey for collective access. Accessibility is a really important thing that all of us can own responsibility for and make sure to support that viewers who are blind, low vision, colorblind, deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind, and have so many other access needs can participate meaningfully in the upcoming Raising Our Voices event this November. And so we're glad, congratulations, that your View on Demand event got accepted. And again, thank you for joining. Just a few quick access notes for this call. We request everyone to keep yourselves on mute and off video, because that is actually supportive of access needs to make sure that there's not visual or audio noise taking place and distracting viewers during the call. Additionally, if you have any questions, when I say please feel free to put them in the chat as they come up, please do so. The chat is a really, really great resource. Feel free to answer each other's questions throughout today's call. I will do my best to answer them as they come up. I want this to be a space where you feel welcome to say, hey, pause. Could you please repeat that? Could you please explain what you mean by that word? Because accessibility has a lot of language that might be newer to some of you, and I'm happy to take the time necessary to make sure that we're all on the same page. So feel free to put questions in the chat, put question, colon, and then have your question that way. So with that, today's webinar is about you as View on Demand participants creating accessible View on Demand events and materials for the Raising Our Voices event series. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, because what this is going to be is a walkthrough for all of the resources available to you, and as well as a discussion of kind of what are the expectations if you haven't had a chance to review them before today. So give me 1 second. All right, can everyone see my screen? I actually can't open the chat yet, so give me 1 second. I want to make sure that this is available to me. There we go. Awesome. So now that you can all see the screen, this page right here is our Supporting Collective Access page. This is the first page. Whenever you have any questions, we encourage you to go to. So the URL, the short URL, is americananthro.org/ROV_collective access. We'll get that URL in the chat here in a moment. And on this page, you can see that we're excited that you're joining us for Raising Our Voices, and that we're requesting you to join us in collective access. Collective access, I want to name, is a term that was created by Mia Mingus and Sins Invalid, and those are disability justice activists specifically. So the practices on this page that you will be needing to look at are for View on Demand events. And so using the interactive table of contents, we'll click on View on Demand events. I'll click out of the pop-up. And then the first thing I want all of you to be aware of is that all View on Demand presentation documents and materials will be required by Thursday, October 29th, 2020. So that's about a week beforehand, before the event gets started. And of course, the sooner you finish these, the better. That's less stress. That's more of the work off of your plate earlier. And additionally, we'll be reviewing every single submission to confirm that what you have submitted fulfills the View on Demand event expectations and access standards. which if they do not, we'll bounce them back to you to make sure that you can make them meet the standards. And if you don't, we will not be including them in the View on Demand events library. So this is really important, and we really want you to utilize this page and the other pages we have for preparing your materials. With that, I'm going to pause and check if there's any questions. Okay. So as you all know, there's 4 types of View on Demand events, and each of them have a slightly different set of expectations. But the expectations basically fall into 3 categories. Those categories include auditory access, they include visual access, and they include digital document access. And we have instructions for how to fulfill providing auditory, visual, and digital document access based off of which event you are working on. For the 3 of them, virtual posters, 3-minute thesis competition, and talks, it's going to be a mix of auditory and visual access. But for podcasts, the only thing you need to worry about is audio access. And that's going to include a transcript. So to create a transcript, we have a few options for how to create a transcript on the other webpage available called Virtual Presentation Accessibility Guidelines. This webpage is a very long, lengthy resource page that's kind of a how-to guide that goes in detail. So I'm going to click on this page, return to table of contents, and at the very top, there is this table of contents that has a few different questions that you might have about what you're doing for the event. So first off, how do I caption or transcribe my own video or audio recording is what we're talking about at this moment for transcripts. We have a few options here for what to do. For podcasts specifically, since this is an audio recording and not a video recording, use YouTube, use Amara. Those 2 might not be the best options, but using an AI transcription software, if you don't have your own transcription software readily available to you already, might be the best choice. We have a few suggestions on here. The first one includes Otter.ai. I'll go ahead and open that. And so this is a voice meeting notes AI transcript software, and you can log in and it generates notes for you. So that's one option. The second option is Sonics.ai. It's a pay-as-you-go transcription. And so this might be a matter of what works best for you, to be honest. So you might want to explore both of those options. Alternatively, find your own software. Regardless of what transcription software you use, you're going to need to review it to make sure that if you're using an AI transcription software, that the transcript you have created is accurate. A transcript is of no use to deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf blind folks if it is inaccurate, full of typos, and spaces where jargon is not actually adequately provided. And so you'll still need to take that time to go through, clean up your transcript, and then you can choose to save your transcript as a text or a .doc file, which is a document file from Word, or from any other open source software you choose. And so that is how you create a transcript for podcasts. So I'm switching back to the collective access page. And just a quick note, so for how to upload your materials, you will have instructions for how to do that on the speaker platform. And those instructions will be step-by-step available to you. You might be able to record it directly on the platform, or you'll be able to upload your recording elsewhere based on your preferences. I'm going to pause and answer this question by Andrew. Can we not simply type up a transcript on our own? You are absolutely welcome to do that. So the reason for these resources are just to provide guidance for alternative options if you don't want to do that. Typing up a transcript can take up a lot of time, but if you've got the time, if you got the will, then more power to you, go for it. So it's honestly up to you, and these pages really are just intended to provide resources as you choose to review and prepare materials for raising our voices. Great question. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, if you have a script, that makes sense. The comment here is I'll be working from a script that I develop when I edit the podcast. So yeah, that works perfectly. If you're working from a script, you type it up yourself, you upload it. It's much more straightforward. Next question, Rabah. So the transcript is a presentation written as an essay. The transcript is going to depend on what your presentation is and which event you've chosen. So let's dive into a little bit more of the other events, and we'll see if that answers that question. And then next question are there guidelines for transcripting external sound clips that might be in other languages or non-linguistic sounds? That's a really good question. Non-linguistic sounds are often included between brackets. So if you review some of the, some of the YouTube recordings we have of webinars, whenever we've had like random phone calls on a webinar or something like that, in brackets, it will show up as phone ringing. For other languages, you write the word as it is spoken, and you don't describe it. You don't translate it in the transcript. You are, for all intents and purposes, a transcript is a direct word for word of what is being spoken. So great questions. I'm going to go ahead and move on to talking a bit more about kind of the expectations for virtual posters. And for virtual posters, the expectations here are really related to visual access beyond the transcript. The first one here is an accessible slide and PDF. If you click on these links, the accessible slide link will take you to this web page called How to Create and Confirm an Accessible PowerPoint, Accessible PowerPoint Tips. So as you're reviewing this page, it gives you advice for how to make sure that your PowerPoint slide is accessible. And by using PowerPoint to create your virtual poster, you're going to have a lot easier of a chance to create an accessible PDF or document that can be shared, because images in and of themselves are inaccessible to screen reader users. So this is the resource we encourage you to review, not just for your poster, but for any kind of slides that you're creating. So the next one, beyond how to create an accessible PowerPoint, is also how to create an accessible PDF. I've clicked on that link, and that takes us to the page for how to create and confirm an accessible PDF document. If you're uploading the material, so if you're uploading a virtual poster as a PDF document, this is going to be really important to review, because a PDF in and of itself, when it's printed, may not be accessible. And so this gives you kind of some quick tips for how to create an accessible PDF document and guide you through some of the most common problems, and also what program you have to use. So if you're using a PDF to upload as a virtual poster, you'll need to make sure you have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro in whatever way you're able to get access to that program. So those are two really helpful resources we highly encourage you to go to make sure that you're able to create a virtual poster that is provided in an accessible way. The reason this is so important is for screen reader users. Screen reader users have a technology that literally reads what is on the screen to them. And so if it's not available in a code in a language that can be understood by them, that means that the person using a screen reader will not have access to that material. So that's the first important thing for virtual posters, which also applies to slides in the case that you are using a slide for the 3-minute thesis competition, or if you're using slides for your talk. The next thing that's going to be applicable whenever you're considering slides is visual description practices. And for virtual posters specifically, that means when referencing and discussing visuals on the poster. So if you have any kind of visuals on your posters, graphs, maps, pictures, cartoons, and you're referencing it while you're recording yourself talking about it, you need to pause and explain what you're talking about. What that means is saying, not as you see here in this graph, but as this graph portrays, on the x-axis we have time, and on the y-axis we have money, and the first bar is is the tallest bar, indicating, so you're going into each of the details for what's on that graph or what's on that picture. So that gives a sense for visual descriptions on those posters. And again, transcripts. If you choose to record yourself, then your transcript, I'm going to pause and rephrase because I think that might be a bit confusing. There are going to be two ways to be able to upload your virtual poster recording. One is you can use the platform's recording device to record your audio. If you choose to do that, we recommend highly that you are using a script, so that way you have your transcript ready and prepared to upload as a separate transcript, because there is no way to incorporate captions. However, if you're planning on recording yourself as a video beside your poster or something like that, then we're encouraging everyone to highly consider listing their video recording on YouTube unlisted, because of how YouTube's transcribing process is really effective, and it's a free process that you can have access to in creating your captions. So I'm going to take you back to this virtual presentation accessibility guidelines page. On this page, we're back on the captions and transcribing video recording or audio recording. And this is where you'll go to review how you use YouTube, if you choose to use YouTube, to prepare your captions, and through your captions, your transcript. Whenever a video is available on YouTube, that transcript is also automatically available through YouTube. The alternative is using Amara. It's a free platform as well, but it's not a free version, or it's not a private version, unlike with YouTube where you can have an unlisted video. And then, you're able to use either YouTube or Amara based off of your preferences, but we're really encouraging members, attendees, to use both of these processes in preparing their transcripts and captions. I'm going to pause and answer Melinda's question here. Is this presentation being recorded, or are we able to watch it again later? Yes, absolutely. This is being recorded, so all of this information will be readily available for you later. And all of these links, whenever we're sending out a follow-up email to all of you View on Demand presenters, you're going to have access to all of these links, and we'll kind of break down what link is helpful in what way. That's a good question. Thank you. So I've switched back to the collective access page. So just a quick recap for virtual posters: accessible slides, visual descriptions, and transcripts. Because you have the option to upload your video to YouTube, you do have the option of including a video of yourself. If you choose to have a video of yourself, you need to include an accessible introduction, much like I did at the beginning of this presentation. You're welcome to reference that in the recording as many times as you need. You're welcome to write down your visual description, your accessible introduction, and practice it, but make sure you include it. And then regarding the next point here is visual description of relevant visual moments. This probably won't be as applicable to virtual posters because you'll probably be focusing on your poster itself. But if you're doing a talk, for example, and you're getting into a more multimodal video presentation mode and you're wanting to show specific things. So for example, I'm gonna lift up my pencil bag, right? So I've just lifted up my pencil bag. It's got a design of Princess Jasmine and Aladdin from the movie Aladdin. And I'm holding it between my two hands. And that's a visual description of a relevant visual moment. basically you're trying to provide an verbal access to what's happening in the video. And so it can be incorporated very naturally as you're speaking about it. And it's a really good pedagogical practice in general to really help also multimodal learning. So that is probably more applicable to talks than it is to virtual posters. But if you are going to use in a virtual poster any kind of models of the work you have, then that's also relevant here. So those are some requirements for virtual posters, and really what I just said applies to across the board for 3-minute thesis competition with slides and with video, and for talks with slides and video. And what you have to provide really depends on what you're choosing to do. Now, moving on to the 3-minute thesis competition, here is a quick reminder of 3-minute thesis competition requires a transcript. And because a 3-minute thesis competition includes a video of yourself talking, much like what's happening here, you need to include an accessible introduction. And then the really important key is if you're presenting a 3-minute thesis competition, don't speed talk. A 3-minute thesis competition is intended to give an explanation of your thesis in 3 minutes. And so that means cutting it down to highlight the most important things instead of trying to jam everything into 3 minutes. The reason this is so important is it's related to the access needs for anyone with cognitive disabilities. Following speed talking is really difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, but it's also going to be a lot more difficult for anyone who is deaf or hard of hearing to follow along. So we have some tips here for how to practice and prepare for your 3-minute thesis competition to not speed talk. And that includes practicing a script in advance. So that's kind of the exception to the idea that virtual posters, 3-minute thesis competition, and talk have similar accessibility standards. And so just scrolling down to the talk, you can see this is really, really similar to the standards for the virtual poster, except that there's a lot of variability here because it depends on if you choose to use a video or a slide. I'm going to pause because I see that there's a question from Angela. For an accessible introduction where only background graphics not referenced by speaker will be shown and the speaker will not be on screen, what is required to say? If you as a speaker are not on the screen, you just need to say your name, your pronouns as you're comfortable, and your position. So in my case, hi, my name is Nell. I use she, her, hers. I'm the AAA's Accessibility and Meetings Coordinator. So awesome. I'm glad that answers your question, Angela. That's a really good question and really important to remember. So when you're not using a video, accessible introduction does not require a visual description. So that gets us through kind of the standards, and I'm just going to repeat what those are, which is you'll be expected to create a transcript or provide a video with your captions. You will be expected to provide visual descriptions of all visuals, including yourself, whenever you are presenting a video. And so those visual descriptions can include graphs, images, pictures, drawings, or things that are going on in the moment during your video. And to provide accessible slides and PDFs, which we have 2 really helpful tips pages for how to create accessible slides and PDFs. I see another question here by Celeste. If you are a visual anthropologist artist presenting photographic stills of your art, in your description, how much do you need to verbally describe the images? Because describing visual knowledge could take the entire length of the talk. That is a really good question. So I'm going to go ahead and actually take us to another helpful resource page, which will also be in the list of resources for you to reference following this webinar. If you need advice for how to create visual descriptions, under the accessibility section of our website, which is under the Attend Events section, you go to Attend Events, you click on Accessibility, and under this section, you've got Creating Image Descriptions. This entire page gives a breakdown for how exactly to provide visual descriptions for a variety of examples. There's an example of a logo and a human portrait and an animal picture and things like that. But to more directly address your question for how much do you need to really describe the most relevant and most important moments of the picture. So kind of basically think why you have captured this picture, why you are sharing this picture, and identify what is most important. So if I've taken a picture of my dog, for example, I'm going to say a picture of a tan and white Corgi Chihuahua resting on fluffy green grass on a sunny day. And that's it. I'm not going to describe the fact that there's a clover leaf on the left-hand side of my dog or something like that. So it's really to hit at the highlights and what you're wanting the viewers to really get from that picture or from that graph. Which is why with graphs it can be a little bit more complicated because you're trying to provide a lot more information. Does that answer your question, Celeste? Awesome. I'm glad that answers it. Nuseba, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. That's but are there example slides and PDFs that we can view for folks doing the poster? Great question. I really am glad you included that because we're actually creating an accessible PDF format. That's not immediately available, but once it's ready, that's an option that you'll be able to reference and to use for creating your slides. So that's the template and the resource we'll have available for you. And regarding how to create that PDF from that, again, go back to the how to create and confirm an accessible PDF because a lot of the PDF accessibility stuff is behind the scenes kind of stuff as opposed to what's visually present. Okay, awesome. Glad that I got your name right and answered the question. I'm switching back to the supporting collective access page and answering this next question by Alexandra. For talks, is there a general preference for slides or to simply present self and talk? That's up to you. It really is up to you. Slides can be a really helpful accessibility tool for people with cognitive disabilities who may be looking for something to reference to while you're talking through something. So I know I personally benefit from having slides to like follow along. And as the speaker says, and so now we're talking about point A or point B or point C, I know what the follow-up commentary is about to talk about. But it's completely up to your preference. If you want just to have a video of yourself, that's totally welcome. If you want to just focus on slides, that's totally welcome. If you want to use both, that's also welcome. And the way you'll be doing that is honestly through what we are recommending is using Zoom to record yourself, unless you're doing like some kind of outdoor fun multimodal video. So does that help answer your question, Alexandra? While I'm waiting for that, I'll go ahead and move on to this last point here. Talkback events. So for talkback events, some of you may have selected using a talkback event to tie in with your talk, with your virtual poster, or with your podcast. And if you did, you as a talkback event host are also expected to be aware of accessible practices that should take place during a virtual live event, such as in this case. Those primarily include accessible introductions of all speakers, point 1, and then an announcement of each participant prior to speaking. So for example, if my colleagues from AAA staff were on this call, we would be switching back and forth. And Jeff would say, this is Jeff. And I would say, this is Nell. And Gabby would say, this is Gabby. So making sure you announce yourself prior to speaking is really important for those talkback events. And then if you want to, in addition to those 2 key points, there's an entire resource available for how to host an accessible virtual meeting also. And if you click on this link, it takes you to hosting accessible virtual meetings. And this page really breaks down the step-by-step of what's expected during an accessible meeting, how to make sure that it's being provided in an accessible way, and why. So that is something also important to kind of prepare for. There's not much you can do in preparation for it regarding like creating materials for your Talkback event besides what you have done for the recording for the View on Demand event, but it's still important to kind of review this and get well acquainted with it. So going back to questions, yes, Alexandra, that is correct. Use Zoom and then upload as a YouTube. That is our recommendation. Use Zoom, upload to YouTube, and use the YouTube features to create your captions that way. Okay, so next question by Irfan. I have some questions about podcast conversation, audio only. I will have with Agamben. Can I ask by speaking during Q&A, or should I send them as chat messages? If you're doing a recording for your podcast conversation, and you're speaking with Agamben, then you should absolutely be just speaking live, unless your preference is to send them as chat messages. Does that answer that question? And while I'm waiting for that, Rabah, are there any recommendations for how to record video, technical guide for those who are not tech savvy? We're working on that. I've primarily been trying to create this accessibility information so there's a sense of what the expectations are and the amount of work and time it might take to create, for example, captions and review captions. But we will definitely do that additional guide of this is how you can record yourself through Zoom. So keep a lookout for that. We'll make sure to update everyone when that's available. If you could send it as a chat message, that will be great. But let's keep it to chat just to make sure that we're maintaining the accessibility practices for everyone to stay on mute, unless the access need you have is to explain it through speaking. If that's the case, then please feel free to take yourself off mute. Yes, excellent question, Alessandra. When do you need to upload your recording by? All materials are due by Thursday, October 29th. That is noted at the top of the View on Demand events section. Again, if you don't fulfill the accessibility standards, your submission will not be included in the View on Demand's events library. The sooner you upload your materials, the sooner we can review them to make sure that they have met the standards. And if they haven't, the sooner we can return them to you to make sure they get up to speed. So absolute deadline, Thursday, October 29th. The sooner you do it, the better. Where do we go to upload them? That's going to be on the speaker portal, which will be sent out in an email as soon as that task list is available. So if you have if you've gone to the annual meeting before, then we use a speaker portal process, which has a task list very similar to the submission process you went through. That task list will take you step by step for each of these expectations also to make sure that you get the guidance you need to make sure you have everything uploaded accordingly. So also a really good question, but yeah, we'll send out that link as soon as the task list is ready, and it will just take you step by step. And it's all due by October 29th. So you've got the entire month, and that's exactly why we're doing this call so early, because we want everyone to have access to this material and information as soon as possible. So that is actually it on my end to go through kind of those expectations, but there's definitely time for questions. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and add them in. So I'm presenting an ArcGIS interactive map, which has hundreds of interactive data points. I was going to simply provide a link for folks to peruse the site. I would need a third-party screen reader, but I'm not sure if that means I would have to click every data point on the site. Do you have any suggestions? That's a really good question. And honestly, there's a lot of technology that currently exists that is not fully accessible for a screen reader user. which means that sometimes the best thing you can do is acknowledge that. A really good golden rule of accessibility is it comes down to flexibility and transparency. Do the best you can to provide as many options available for viewers to go through and use whatever tools work best for them. It's kind of why with this we're talking a lot about transcripts, because transcripts can be more readily used by a lot of people, but also captions are really helpful in videos because that's more helpful for somebody who is deaf but not deafblind. So basically, when it comes to ArcGIS, being transparent and saying that it might not be screen reader user friendly is okay. Just make sure to acknowledge that and do the best you can to summarize kind of what that looks like. And yes, it will still be accepted as is, so long as you can give a note about that. Celeste, what are the desired lengths of the talks? So the length for the talk is 20 minutes. The length for the podcast is 40 minutes. And virtual poster, if I remember correctly, is only 10 minutes. So then virtual posters sound very complicated, or is that only me? So virtual posters, if you want to do it the least complicated, it's going to be hopping onto Zoom and doing something like this, where you're screen sharing and you turn off your, not screen sharing, I apologize, where you're recording your screen at the same time while screen sharing, and just turning off your video and talking through the virtual poster. But if you do have any specific questions about that, we're absolutely here and open as a resource to kind of guide you through some of the more confusing parts of a virtual poster. Does that help, Robert? Awesome. All right, any other questions? Okay, Emmeline, no worries about asking something basic and obvious. Technology has been a sharp learning curve for a lot of us. So how do you upload a Zoom video to YouTube? So uploading a Zoom video to YouTube, basically, you know what? Let's see. I'm gonna open up YouTube here. Your Zoom video, you can take care of your recording, and so my apologies. I wish I had prepared this earlier, but for uploading a Zoom video, you're going to click on Create to your account, and then you'll upload the video that way. So it needs to be an MP4 or something like that. Regarding the following question, YouTube does have closed captions, and it does provide transcript. The way to access those closed captions, oh, this is not the AAA account, so I don't have access to this at the moment. If you are in your own account, you are able to edit a video, and that's going to be on the right-hand side, and that will take you to the subtitles option. Transcripts are available through what setting is available, and so people can choose to open a transcript, except that is not currently showing the, oh, it's over here. It's under the 3 dots, and then you open transcript. And it should show up on the right-hand side. And as you can see, this transcript is kind of inaccurate right now because it's not been updated yet. So I'm going to close out of that. And that is, okay, going back to Emmeline's question, YouTube has closed captions. You can update those closed captions. You'll need to go through and update those closed captions, and then that transcript is available that way. And Zoom does not provide a transcript. At the moment, we have captions on this Zoom call because of a professional captioner who is doing this work, and so that costs money. So using YouTube will provide you the opportunity to make sure that you have an automatically transcribed text available to update accordingly. Next question, Rachel, how long do you want the videos to be for talks? It is 20 minutes. For virtual posters, 10 minutes. For 3-minute thesis competition, it cannot be a second over 3 minutes. Next question, quality of audio, given the current condition, should you do it over Zoom or phone? In the case of the latter, quality can be poor. Any suggestions? Go ahead and email us about that one. That might be a one-on-one talk. That's a good question though. Yes, the links will be sent to you, and this video will absolutely be on YouTube. So yes, you record your videos on Zoom, get a YouTube account, upload it there, make it unlisted, and then share the link to AAA. And then what is the software that transcribes the audio file? On YouTube, it does only video. That is correct. For software that transcribes audio file, that is going to be under on the virtual presentations page. You go to how do I caption or transcribe my own video or audio recording? And the recommendation we have is using AI transcription through Otter or Sonics. And that's completely your choice based off of what you need. And I know I kind of rushed through all of those questions, so if you need me to repeat anything, feel free to ask. According to experience, how many slides can you put in 10 minutes? A good rule of thumb, and I think Jeff, our director of communications, would agree on this, is it's 1 slide per minute, and that's honestly pushing it. So if you're talking about the virtual poster, you can only do 1 slide. So that's not really a choice. It's only 1 slide. For a talk, you've got 20 minutes. So less than 20 slides would be recommended there.
I would agree. Now, if I can jump in, the rule of thumb is 1 minute per slide, but I would even go less than that because it ends up taking up way more time than you think. Mm-hmm. Even when you record yourself for 20 minutes, when the time comes, it'll go longer. So give yourself some time. And as Nell also brought up, you want to slow your pace down. You don't want to rush. So by giving yourself extra time, that gives you a little bit more freedom.
Yes, thank you so much, Jeff. Much appreciated. So less slides better, and try to keep yourself at a slow, reasonable pace. You'll thank yourself later whenever you're going through the transcription too. And it's okay if you need to record it a few times because you did speak so quickly. That's something I'm very honest about that I keep struggling with. I know I often talk way faster than I need to. So keep in mind that this is going to be a bit of a learning process and might take a few repeats in recording your session. Podcast info is, so yes, it's 40 minutes. No longer than 40 minutes, and it's audio only. So you'll want to choose your software to record your podcast, or you will be able to record it directly on the platform. Directly on the platform, however, means you won't be able to download it and easily transcribe it through the AI transcription software. So that's still a your choice kind of thing, especially because technology is so varied and people have a ton of different preferences. So then there are a number of websites that will auto-transcribe audio for free for up to 45 minutes, which would cover anyone doing poster and shorter requirements. So definitely check those out. There's a lot of resources out there. These are just some of the resources that we're trying to pinpoint and guide you to and walk you through. But if you have your own way, so like somebody mentioned earlier, they'll be reading a script and that transcript is ready. So they don't need to have a transcription software. That's totally okay. The goal is that your presentation is as accessible possible, which means that a transcript and or captions are ultimately provided, that you've been thoughtful in providing visual descriptions. That includes accessible introductions with visual descriptions, that includes relevant moments, and digital documents are accessible. I'm also going to type in the accessibility email address specifically. So for accessibility questions, please email that one. And then next question, if using a lexicology analysis graph showcasing word density based on size and color of bubbles, how best can we accommodate those who are colorblind? Excellent question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I don't know. I don't have an immediate answer for that question, unfortunately. If there's a way to really emphasize the size aspect and work with your analysis graph to have that option, that's definitely a preference. Typically for colorblind suggestions, the suggestion is to go with patterns as much as possible. Patterns, and if you want to confirm whether or not colorblind, whether your material is available for colorblind people and easily accessible, a lot of our web pages have this resource available for checking. Sorry, I'm now trying to find the correct resource for checking the colors. And so what we do is we go to the contrast checker tool. And this tool right here, the contrast checker tool, makes sure that any of the colors you're using in your presentation are fully accessible, including this on the right-hand side, grayscale buttons that allow your text to be readable for people with color blindness. So this is a tool that will be referenced a lot whenever you're looking through PowerPoint tips. And we highly encourage you using it. But yeah, I'll give a more specific answer to you via that email. Thank you, Emma. All right. Lots of really good questions. Thank you so much. I appreciate how interactive you all are throughout this, and really excited that you're joining us for making sure that we can create a really accessible space, that we can really establish these new norms, these new cultural standards that ensure that as many people who attend this virtual event series are able to actually fully participate and get access to the materials, the brilliant materials you're all sharing with the world through this event. So if there's no other questions, then I would love to give back some of your time for the day, because I know all of us, especially in this time, are busy, but I do see 2 more questions coming in and we do have time for them. Would it be possible to see an example of a virtual poster? Let me get back to you on that, Robert. I think we'll have an example available, but if not, like I said, we'll definitely have that template available. And then next question, how are the Talkback events held, and how can we as the presenters make sure these events are accessible? Great question. I'm gonna, on the collective access page, click on Talkback event again. The Talkback events will be hosted by us as AAA. We will be hosting them on Google Meeting, which actually provides automated captioning. So it might not always capture the jargon that you might use, but it is going to capture a lot of the maybe more conversational bits that you'll have during the Talkback event. And so the resource we have for making sure your event is accessible as possible is both these 2 highlights, which is make sure you have an accessible introduction and you announce yourself prior to speaking if there's multiple people in that event. But if not, then it's just you talking and like interacting with the chat, kind of like what I'm doing. You may have noticed that I've been really trying to be intentional in reading aloud the questions as they come in, so that way people know what I'm referencing and how I'm responding to it. So if that's kind of the way you would want to manage the Talkback event, you're welcome to. But because these Talkback events are supposed to be spaces where you're able to engage with participants or with attendees who want to talk to you, much like they would in an in-person opportunity, then you're welcome to have video and your mics on. Well, but you would ask everyone to turn off their mics until they speak, it just as in any Zoom meeting. So you click on how to host an accessible virtual meeting, and there's a lot more detailed explanations for exactly what other things you need to consider. And so just review this a few times and kind of get into the groove of it and keep that in mind before you get into your Talkback event. And feel free to share this link so people know why you might be hosting the Talkback event in the way that you are. And so when is the Talkback held? We will be scheduling those. We don't have that schedule available yet, but as soon as it is available and once that platform is live, you'll be able to see when Talkback events are linked to the talks and virtual posters and the podcast specifically. I'm just pausing to see if there's any other questions. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing the screen because I think that we've covered most of the resources. As I've repeated, we're going to make sure that you have a list of these resources. That's going to include the links to the collective access page. That's going to include links to the PDF tips page, the PowerPoint tips page, the creating image descriptions page, the hosting accessible virtual meetings page, and then the longer virtual presentation guidelines page, which you're welcome to review and take your time to review. But if it's overwhelming, you're welcome to step back and not use that, except for when it's referenced as a point of step-by-step instructions. So all of those links will be available to you. This recording will be available to you after we have taken the time to make sure the captions are available as well. So awesome. I'm very glad that this has been helpful. And if you have any other questions following this, I sincerely mean, please email us. Please email us at accessibility@americananthro.org. Because I'll be able to answer some of those questions one-on-one and also check in on some of the more specific questions regarding recordings and things like that. But keep in mind that we will still be sending out a few more references and resources. So the speaker portal is going to be opening in the next week or two, which will have your task list. And that task list will all be due by Thursday, October 29th, with the high encouragement and recommendation and earnestly request by all of us here at AAA to submit your materials earlier rather than later, so we can review it, confirm they're accessible, and get your materials in that library without any struggles. I am very hopeful of the same, Alessandra. So I'm very glad that you're all here and joining us in this lovely journey of accessibility as I keep referencing it. So you'll be able to review this recording at a later time. And I think with that, we can go ahead and end this. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Congratulations for having an accepted View on Demand event. And thank you for joining us in this wonderful journey of experimentation and community for both raising our voices and for accessibility standards.